nerds, and welcome. We are Crossing the Nerdverse, bringing you yet another episode. My name is Travis. I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic co-hosts, Eric, Ryan, and Clark. On this week's episode, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of test playing a brand new RPG. I'm going to hold off on that for just a little bit, let everybody get through the hey, how are yous. We'll start with the person who's most in danger of being disconnected due to inclement weather and see how Clark's doing.
I am doing good, minus the baseball-sized hail that I'm supposed to be getting. I definitely don't think we just got baseball. It's probably more golf ball size. I have a pit bull who stuffed himself under my desk for fear, and 3 cats who just keep pestering me because they too also don't like the Rumblies. So yeah, if I just randomly drop off, we're going to call it RP, and part of the story. Please know I'm screaming internally.
We'll just roll that into the narrative. Yeah, I hope you and the property, stay safe. I know hail's a big danger, so hopefully not too terrible on you guys. Eric, how was your week? Any snow up there in the Canada way?
No, it's all going away, actually. Shockingly. We get a lot of wind, though. That's big here, where we're at, because it's the Atlantic. So, yeah, we get... Our thing is, wind and rain lately. Super annoying. But, yeah, life's not too bad. So I looked into it. I think we're going to end up LLCing through New Mexico. So I was looking at that. And then just putting up more shorts and YouTube stuff. People enjoying the YouTube more than anywhere else, especially the shorts. I think we're funny. Very upset my Pikachu could beat up Superman short didn't do better, but I can live with it.
One episode. I just want one episode where the yellow rat does not get mentioned. That's all I need from life.
Just the one.
And other than that, I think that's pretty much. Yeah, that's. Oh, I put in for my passport. That's a very important thing.
Yeah, you probably need that if you want to visit the VA again, I suppose.
Yeah, supposedly I think I can get across the border without it, but I really don't want to chance it.
So. Yeah, I don't blame you on that.
I feel like it'd be better to just have it instead of having to risk not being able to get to your VA appointment.
Yeah, they're kind of sticklers with making it. So
right. I see Ryan over there flipping through rule books. Ryan, how was your week, brother?
The week has been very high stress, but very, very cool. Effectively, both of my children are far too smart, and so are signed up for every competition that apparently is happening right now. And we just started our spring break. And so I've had 2 hyper intelligent, hyper energy children, making my days a little more complicated. But no, it's been fantastic. In truth, I've been very, very excited for tonight's episode. I've become extremely invested in this particular RPG. I think it is very well crafted, and I'm excited to see how it goes tonight.
I'm definitely excited to test play. For those of you that tune in pretty often, you can see I've had a bit of change of scenery. I'm currently in Las Cruces, New Mexico, getting prepped for the Baton Memorial Marathon. It starts Saturday morning at sunrise. My sister and I are shooting for the 7.5-hour mark. Maybe a little harder to hit this year, just due to some constraining restraints. Obviously, my sister and I both have had pretty significant life changes. She started a new job with a new company, has had a handful of health-related problems with her knee and ribs. I, of course, had a baby recently, so that'll derail your timelines for those of you wondering what it's like having a kid. It's definitely a big change to your daily routine. But we're going to shoot for the full 26.2 miles. If for whatever reason our health isn't holding up the way we had predicted, we're going to take the safe bet this year and be responsible adults and do the half. But I have a feeling that we can both conquer the full this year. She and I both, especially her, I will say, whose pain tolerance is way higher than mine, and her determination, at least on equal par as mine. I'm sure we're probably going to push for the full. We may not make our 7.5 mark, but we're going to finish.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Honestly, this Memorial Marathon means a lot to my sister and I. Our great uncle is a survivor of the Bataan Death March. So every year we do it. We put a picture of him on our pack. We also pick up another little placard from individuals that passed away during the Bataan March to carry their name on our pack as well. So definitely something that means a lot to our family, and we're very excited to do it, every year.
I forgot to put my kid's new drawing up, or new colored page up.
They did a very good job. They color in the lines better than you do. That's fantastic.
I know. Trust me, I remember. I ran a lot of really poorly done training in the Army.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of your range cards you drew up, and they were not great.
No, I was not the range guy.
But
I would do it.
But speaking of things you don't do well, let's jump into this RPG.
Super excited. Okay, so
that was cold blood.
checklist.
I had to roll that one back. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry. You're fine. You're fine at RPGs.
It's okay. I'll edit out every third word you say. This should be great.
And Eric is the best. All right, so quick checklist.
Snippets of my voice
for everybody. Does everybody have a set of standard polyhedral dice with them?
Polyhedral just means dice, right? So I just got like dice.
Yeah. Do you have a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20?
Yeah.
Polyhedral means multi-sided.
Multi-sided, yeah. Fantastic, magical.
Sciencey words already.
Does everybody have a well-shuffled deck of cards without jokers? Fantastic. Okay, for our listeners, I do want to go over some interesting little tweaks that we had to make given how we do our recordings and that kind of thing. Under normal circumstances, this game is played with one or more decks of cards set up on the table as what's called an action deck. Given the fact that all of us are presently several hundred miles apart, we are going to be playing with everybody having their own individual action deck. I also have one to run as mission control. The basic mechanic of the game is that your deck of cards will set your difficulty for any particular check that you make. Anytime any of our scientists will be making some kind of investigation or any check, really, they will flip over 2 cards from their deck and then roll the relevant skills in order to try to defeat the difficulty presented by the cards. These are not combined. The cards are not combined, but the dice are. So, for example, Travis, who's going to be playing Dr. Franklin S. Relax, attempts to understand a bizarre cave drawing or a peculiar geological formation and rolls a think plus skill. The way that's going to work is I, as mission control, will dictate one skill that must be included. In this case, it's think. Travis, playing Dr. Relax, will then justify the use of a secondary skill. This can be anything that he can feasibly describe, such as using something like evade to clamber up the geological formation in order to get a closer look.
Like a ninja.
Like a ninja. You can also use a piece of specialty gear. Each of our scientists will be carrying one signature piece of gear, and their suits will have the capability of creating others for them. A piece of gear can be used in substitution for any of the skills used in the check. So, using our previous example, Travis has decided to roll think plus evade. However, he happens to be carrying, let's say, belaying gear or some other tool or device. He can swap that in even for the dictated skill, using an onboard computer to do think, for example. He'll roll those dice together. Let's assume that he rolls a D8 and a D6. When he combines those two together, if he rolled really well, he'll be able to pick up any card that he exceeds and add it to his hand. Cards in hand are going to represent a resource management mechanic for each of our scientists. They'll then be able to discard these cards to do things like power specialty equipment, try to use sensors or radio, or even, if they save up enough of them, they can discard 8 cards from their hand in order to level up, upgrading their inherent systems, either within their suit or with their character's skills. Now, before we go any further, I do want to take a moment. We've had a session 0 between myself and all of the players. We understand what we are getting into and what the story is going to entail going forward. for the rest of you, there are a few small warnings I'm going to put right here at the beginning. That way you can decide if you want to listen to the rest of the story.
Just do it.
The game itself is going to include several instances of claustrophobia, thalassophobia, despair, depression, futility, extra-dimensional beings, and sections of eldritch horror. Yes, Travis?
Does it have any of the? Is it Thessalonisophobia or Thossophobia, which is the fear of long words?
I have
Given the
that
fact
fear.
that we are playing scientists in this particular game, it's likely that several long words are going to come up.
Eric doesn't have that fear. He just doesn't know what any of them mean. You're not afraid of them.
Same
You just
thing.
understand any of them.
It's the same fucking thing.
Yes, and we of course are ribbing each other, good-natured guys, but this is something we do take seriously, and so those elements are going to be present in the story coming up. Please be aware as we go forward. All right. Checking in. Everybody good to go?
Yeah.
Thumbs up all the way around. Fantastic.
Just to mimic my favorite Instagram reel with the volleyball referee.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I
All
sent
right.
that to everybody I know.
As we get into the game, guys, we are going to have two distinct positions within the expedition. I myself will be playing Mission Control. I have 5 distinct responsibilities as Mission Control. I am going to guide and enliven the story. I'm going to present challenges to you and your group, but I'm going to do so while being a fan of the scientists' team. I'm going to ask the players many questions, and I'm going to fill out the world with the answers that you give me. So you are going to have an opportunity in this game to not just control your character, but to control aspects as a player of the world you're adventuring in. The 3 of you will be playing a group of scientists. Your 5 objectives, your 5 responsibilities, are to narrate your actions without an outcome, to give everyone time to shine within the story, to fill the world in with your ideas, to take risks and rise from your failures, and to build both the world and the story together. As we proceed, the story will begin to unfold, and you as the players are actually going to get an opportunity to govern the twists and turns and interesting details that we find.
Do you know what the most unbelievable part of this whole thing is?
What's that?
I passed college.
Fair enough. All right.
Never happened.
If I'm not the main character, I don't want to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with you being the leader. Only because Clark might lose power. Because I feel like she's smarter than the both of us. Just throwing that out there. No
I
offense,
feel like
Travis.
Clark in real life is smarter than all of us.
Fair enough.
But I mean, that's what I actually mean.
She does the maths and the computies.
Philosophophobia? The fear of hypothetical questions. They're talking about
I
it
have
in the
nothing
chat.
on that front. Yeah.
Oh, I was like, do you believe that question would scare you?
Oh, we do have Jimmy Bones in the chat. I'm glad you are here, brother. I think you're going to enjoy the narrative that follows.
Eric just doesn't like being asked any questions directly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
All
mind. Just I can't always give an answer.
Let's go ahead and get rolling here, guys.
Eric's just like, that's a great looking question, and then just leaves like whatever's going on.
I'm like every other politician in the world, and I just repeat the question and then talk about Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I find that that's the best way to just avoid it.
Is that how you spin Pikachu into every situation?
See? Now everybody talks about it more. We're generating here. So anytime someone's going to like hashtag Pikachu, eventually we're just going to start popping up all the time. Just throwing that out there.
All right. Welcome, Substratum team. The Substratum Protocol was created in the event that an emergency subterranean expedition was ever needed, coupled with the list of scientists, equipment, and procedures to ensure its success regardless of the nature of the emergency. When the interdimensional portal opened at Earth's core, the Substratum Protocol was initiated, and scientists were rushed at all costs to the hastily built Fracture Observatory. You are the best and brightest scientists that we have left to stem the apocalypse. You are the Substratum Expedition team.
Woo! I just had to get that in there. Very important. I'm like a woo girl.
Not to be confused with an awooga, which is like an old school sounding horn.
Dude.
So,
Good
I
call.
miss the awooga horns, by the way. I feel like that should make a comeback soon. We should get rid of the beeps and modern horns and bring back the awooga.
as we discussed in our last episode, the world is ending. The planet itself has been sheared nearly in two. A diagonal, in relative to the equator, break stretches straight through several major population centers of the planet. And now, the disparate halves, held together simply by gravity or some unknown energy source near the core, has led to massive global panic and unrest. True to its nature, the minute that there was a significant problem out of their control, funding began to pour in to these long-forgotten scientific research stations and preparatory protocols. And true to its nature, it was just a little too late. As such, your scientists are going to be joining the expedition at a time where everything is somewhat in a panic. Everything is slapdash. And though funding is pouring in from nearly everywhere in the world, the resources available to you do not include time. What you've decided you've missed the most since you got picked for this particular expedition team is the normalcy of being able to use your sense of hearing. At every step along the way, everything has been unusual in that regard, and no one warned you about it. From the time that you were picked up in what you'll call a helicopter, though the strange device had far too many propellers, your head was wrapped in a tight headset in order to keep the dull, bassy thumps away from ruining your ears. Voices came through heavily modulated static, and you were whisked away at all speed. As you approached the breach in the Earth's crust, suddenly all the sound changed. Even through your protective headset, you could hear the grinding of stone beneath you, thunderous rumbles ripping across the surface of the planet. The more interesting thing was the constant static-like hiss and the massive white wall of steam and cloud that billowed from the break in the world. Your pilot seemed nonplussed at this and flew directly into the occlusion, and I imagine it would be common for a sense of panic to grip you as all visual disappears, surrounded by white mist, slowly beating and becoming condensate on the windows of your bizarre helicopter. As you were deposited at the hastily constructed Fracture Observatory, you and your fellow scientists took off those protective headsets, and your ears were assaulted by the sounds around you. Yes, the hiss of steam, the grinding of stone, the constant tremors and earthquakes, but also the panicked shouts of the dozens, if not hundreds, of staff at the peculiar facility. You see, the Fracture Observatory is not like any other structure you've ever seen. It was built suspended on cables over a miles-wide opening in the surface of the Earth. Its general saucer shape is pocked and dotted with structures, some of them obvious power generation, others storage, others office-style buildings, all put together as hastily as possible. More and more of these helicopters, these vertical birds, are coming in and taking off, and as you look up, you don't see any form of control tower or communication, and that worry grips you again, waiting for one blind pilot to slam his vehicle into the next, sending everything crashing down, fiery, into that massive white void beneath you. What little glimpse you had of the expanse underneath you is blissfully occluded by the concrete and steel that you find under your feet as you are whisked across the landing pads and into the buildings. And again, your sense of hearing is assaulted in an entirely different way. After being outside for such a short time, scant minutes, you find yourself surrounded by sound-dampening protective interior of structure. The ceiling and the walls are covered in spiky foam plates that cause every little noise to be absorbed and dampened. And instead of being deafened by the sounds outside and the rumbling and the hissing and the void, now you're deafened by sounds you didn't even know you could hear. Sounds like your own heartbeat. Sounds like your guts churning as they work nervously through your breakfast. Yes, Travis.
I'm going to take this opportunity to be writing everything down as frantically as possible. Being an anthropologist, I want to capture all of the human emotion happening right now,
Fantastic.
especially with my close party members. So I'm just going to be almost to an annoying extent just scribbling heavily into my notebook.
Okay. Actually, let's take the opportunity to talk to your teammates, too. Under this particular sensory assault, let's start with Dr. Conway. How is your character responding to this?
I'm gonna go with not exactly writing everything down, but I really want to take in like my scenery and just see what all is going. It's kind of like that kid pressed up against the window as you're driving on your cross country road trip. I'm excitedly formulating ideas for all the experiments that I can do once I get like released into the wild.
Not a lot of reticence coming from you. Instead, just naked
I think,
curiosity.
it's the intellectual curiosity. I'm like, let me off this boat. I'm gonna get my resources, get out of here, and then the government's gonna give me some cool stuff to play with later.
All right. And perhaps the only member of our team who might be nervous about being here, given his particular past, Dr. McSwiftly. How are you responding to this?
I would actually be happy because, from my background, I was in prison, if I remember correctly, in the beginning.
So all of this is an upgrade.
So free air is good air. So I am happy to get to work again soon and not be confined in a slightly smaller area than what we're probably going to be confined in shortly. And same thing with the census. I mean, it wouldn't be a big deal because at some point I would, based on my character, probably like solitary confinement randomly and things of that nature. So I would be well adept with dealing with a lot of those different things. I would probably be more comfortable by the fact that there's people all around, and I can't gauge my entire situation. So like as in jail, I would probably be in a high security type place because of what I did. So I probably was on my toes all the time, and now I'm around a lot of sciencey people, so I'm pretty comfortable with myself, but still a little off at the same time.
Is anyone getting a real like Mad Doctor from Lilo and Stitch vibe off of Eric's character?
A little bit, yeah. Okay.
I haven't watched that movie in years, by the way, so I didn't intentionally steal anything from that.
The unfortunate
you are
truth.
giving off that vibe.
The unfortunate truth for your characters is that after you signed on the dotted line and agreed to participate in the Substratum expedition, a lot of your choice has been taken away, for some of you. For others, looks distinctly at Dr. McSwiftly, you find yourself with unprecedented freedom. You are whisked away from your homes. You are taken to the middle of nowhere, occluded in a wall of rapidly evaporated fog, and ushered into a structure while under guard. The interior of the structure, you are pushed and herded rapidly through maze-like hallways, all of it dead silent, aside from the occasional whispered conversation from one of your teammates or the shouting rumbles coming from deeper within the structure. The first person that you are actually led to is a little surprising. It's not the stereotypical scientist figure that you would expect. You are ushered into a large room, the likes of which you've only seen in movies whenever NASA is getting ready to launch a rocket ship. A huge auditorium, stair-stepping down to massive screens. all manned by faceless specialists in white shirts and brown trousers, feeding data into 3 massive screens that take up the majority of the far wall, that stretch farther than the stages at the theaters in New York. This data is nearly impossible to decipher at first glance. It's charts and graphs, seismic readings, radiation counts, even things like gravitational displays, the type that you only ever saw used in theory. The individual that greets you, and obviously the one in charge, identifies himself as Dr. Knight. He's maybe 30 years old, and cuts an image of someone that you would likely see in the back of a van on a beach, more so than anyone in charge of a multi-trillion-dollar expedition.
Like heavy mustache, dead eyes back of a van, or like
I'm
a
thinking like
van
hippie.
from the
Like,
70s, like hippie van.
More like the
Yes.
hippie van. He's perhaps 6 feet tall, unusually thin to the
Perhaps.
point of being malnourished. He's
Does he also have
obviously
a dog?
He does not have a dog. Although the
his
image
name
that
is
you're
not
suggesting
Shaggy. Good try.
is pretty close. He's got perhaps a week or more of unshaved growth on his face. His eyes carry heavy bag from lack of sleep, or at least lack of rest. His hair is unkempt and unruly, coming out like a mane from his head, aside from a grouping held together by a rather abused hair tie jutting out of the back. He doesn't wear the white lab coat as you would expect, instead is wearing a threadbare brown blazer. Once you are delivered to this person, he doesn't wait. He simply turns and begins to speak, expecting each of you to follow. He gives you a short speech, part of it likely prepared, part of it ad hoc, effectively welcoming you to the Substratum Expedition team. But you can tell by his body language, by his patterns, he's spent. Everything about him is spent. He has no energy left, and yet seems to be running entirely on stress and desperation. He informs you that your first stop is going to be the DSPRT depot and hangar, but does give you an opportunity to ask any questions first.
I'm gonna ask what our quarters situation is going to be like, completely misunderstanding the fact that we will be diving into the depths.
The look that he gives you is one of sincere confusion. Looking you up and down, he checks a clipboard that he has in his hand, as if to ascertain that you're the one that's supposed to be here. Simply says, "Quarters? What quarters?"
Will we not be staying?
"Ah. Well, I suppose in a manner of speaking, the DSPRTs are going to be your quarters for the next 150 days. How much of a briefing did each of you get?" And he turns and continues to walk.
I was told there would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study potential xenoarchaeology, and so I arrived immediately.
I was told I was going to get to work with the materials that I needed for my experiment, and I stopped paying attention after that.
So
freedom. That's it. Freedom.
he turns, looks at his clipboard again, and stops dead in the middle of this hallway. Much to the chagrin of the traffic of people moving in and out of the main auditorium. He takes a deep breath and says, "Very well. Your designation is going to be Expedition Team Whiskey. You are going to be the 5th expedition that we are sending into the fracture. Did anyone warn you of the duration?"
Question.
Yes, Mark.
What happened to the other 4 teams? Dr. Knight, Mr. Knight.
So you can see a
Dr. Knight?
visible paling, especially
Yeah.
around the eyes. As he says, many of their findings are still under scrutiny.
Outstanding, would you say?
So
You can say.
I believe the question was directed as to where are the personnel currently,
They are
and not what they found.
still on mission, we believe.
Okay, you believe.
You are going to be outfitted with enough equipment and supplies given the matter reconfiguration systems for 300 days on task. This should give you enough to be able to reach the goal and return. And when he says should be enough, the doubt in his voice is so thick that you can't tell if he was trying to hide it or not. And he turns and continues walking, again expecting you to follow.
I'm gonna very drastically flip a page in my notebook and then just go back to scribbling, just as hard and as fast as I can.
All right.
Yeah, 300 days, check.
Around us right now, there's a lot of people and things.
There is.
Yeah, a lot of people for Eric to murder.
Okay, not murdering. I want to I don't know if you want me to do an observation roll, but I just want to get the general feeling of the other people around me. As in dread, giving up, or are they looking at us like we're the next people that are going to go down here and die? Do you know what I mean? Is there some sort of
Absolutely. So you won't, given your character's background, you won't actually need to roll for this. When you are moving through these crowds of people, you can see there's 3 real distinct tones, I guess vibes almost, that you get from these people. The general air of the observatory is one of absolute panic and disarray. These are people that are trying to accomplish something extremely delicate very quickly with limited resources. The most limited resource, of course, being time. Secondly, when you get an idea of you and your team, the reaction that people are giving you, you get what you would expect, with several of them give you no mind at all. They are entirely focused on their task and don't spend a whole lot of time at the newest team walking through their workspace. But there is 2 conflicting vibes that you get from the people that do take notice of you. One of absolute despair, sadness, the type that you only get when there is a lack of hope. Someone going through the motions. Others are looking at you and your team like you're rock stars, almost envious of the 3 of you walking across their space and looking at you full of hope, full of admiration, and the type of energy that you would love to see coming from Dr. Knight.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I just take note of everything as we're walking, trying to gauge.
Absolutely. So once again into the maze-like hallways, and you can tell that quickly there's no seeming system for how the hallways were set out. There is a bit of a grid, a bit of a pattern, but sometimes it makes no sense, and you see many side pathways that simply dead end or don't really go anywhere and have been converted into areas of makeshift storage, especially for things like paperwork, computer equipment. Racks and shelves have been set up in some of these. And Travis, or Dr. Relax, you can actually pick up what happened here. This is an entire modular system, with each section of the building being laid down to be used with the next one in as rapid a position as possible, but not with a lot of foresight or care. Once you leave these maze-like hallways again, you enter another room, and this one is significantly smaller than the auditorium and significantly louder. Walking into this one, you get a sudden assault of noise and scent that you didn't see coming even from just around the corner before. It's loud and grinding and electrical, like you're walking into a very busy mechanic shop or a garage. The air is filled with the scent of oil and burning plastic and that ozone scent of high voltage electricity. There's perhaps 24 individuals in this chamber, and you can see along the wall 3 distinct suits being lifted on A-frame hydraulic lifts, and you get your first sight of the DSPRT Mark 1s.
Mech
This-
suits.
Mech suits indeed. Dr. Knight, who's been leading you through this maze, continues to explain several details about your venture. A lot of them, the ones that stood out to you and your characters, were going to be, of course, that you're expected to be on task for 300 days. Though you get the distinct feeling that that is wildly overcompensating for something. It's as if they're doubling down on what is estimated to be on a 150-day journey. So that's good news. The bad news is that he did briefly speak on what he called the portal. Now, you've heard this term used very rarely by some of the briefing that you had, and you've been led to understand that there is a entity or an anomaly near the Earth's core that is now your problem, and sounds like some shit that you are contractually obligated to care about. Additionally, Dr. Knight does let slip, not just on duration, but the fact that you are expected to be covering well over 5,700 kilometers on your descent. Travis, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up when he mentions the portal. I'm going to relate it back to my, again, potential knowledge of xenoarchaeology and their connection to various other dissimilar cultures, which is what I wrote my thesis on, and get excited and ask if we were going to be spending 300 days directly at the base camp studying said portal with the rest of the team.
So he'll regard you for a minute as if he's trying to determine if you're joking, before simply shaking his head. Perhaps I should put it to you this way. You and your team are expected, over the course of your duration, to not just locate the device, but come to an understanding so that you can close it or change it. It's our current belief that it is responsible for the breaking of the world.
But you said there was 5 other teams.
Indeed. Your team is expected to proceed autonomously. Yes,
Game on.
Dr. And he checks his list. Dr. Conway.
Do we believe that closing or changing the portal will return the Earth to its previous state, or just that it will stop the fissure?
I see, you had very little briefing. Whatever the anomaly is, it is reducing the volume of our core. We don't know how or why. Your primary objective is to, frankly, not let it do that.
So, are we going to get any of the previous data the other teams have found that you have? So, like anything they sent to you, are we going to get it relayed to us so we have an idea of what we're walking into?
I see. Theoretically. You're running into
Lot
an
of
additional complication.
theories.
Firstly, there is an incredible amount of data that's being brought up from the fissure itself. It is still being parsed. Additionally, we've had some complications in our data specialists as they're attempting to collate, I suppose, the information into a usable format.
Okay. Are we going to have, like, is there comms with them while we're going down? Like, are we talking
Yes.
to them? Are we buddies?
We will have direct radio communication between here at Control and you in the DSPRTs.
No, the other teams.
Is it
The other teams might be able to relay through us to you.
is it a data understanding problem? Is it like a language problem with the data? Because I can take a look at it. I read several languages.
He takes a deep breath, and you can see that exasperation finally seats, and he says, "No, it's an expertise issue. The last group of scientists that tried to understand the readings we got below level 4 ended up gouging out their eyes with whatever they could get a hold of and pouring hydrochloric acid into the sockets. We
Level
believe
4,
in an
you said?
attempt to burn the images out."
I would like to not be assigned to their team.
Yeah, they They're under the care of our specialists currently. We're attempting to digitize the data and allow an AI to configure it. And yes, beneath level 4. Please don't take that as my assurance that the upper levels will be an easier traversal. It's been our findings that each team that has descended has encountered deviations in course.
I run over to his suit. I want to put it on.
He takes a steadying breath as you walk over. And Dr. Swiftly, as you walk up to the suits, you are looking at something that stands out. Something that you would expect to only find in science fiction. It has a vibe about it as one part mech suit and one part hazmat. It's a huge robotic exosuit that is covered in panels and gadgets and, effectively sci-fi fuckery. As you start examining it, you do find
That's the technical term?
That's the technical term, yes. Effectively, what you're looking at is a 7.5-foot tall robotic exosuit meant to entirely enclose the occupant in a sealed environment. It's dominated by a few key features. The helmet top of the suit itself, the vehicle perhaps, is massive. It's a massive dome, a transparent glass dome that stretches around a 3-foot in diameter collar that rests just above the shoulders of the pilot. The glass itself has a very mild, nearly imperceptible tinge of green, something that reminds you of the old representations of radiation from back in the day. A faint glow, almost. As you're examining the suit, the rest of it is primarily armored plating, as well as flexible carbon fiber environmental containment. The first thing that might come to your mind, aside from it looking like something straight from science fiction, is the fact that it must weigh an incredible amount. The compositions alone would be hundreds of pounds, if not more accurately measured in tons. The back of each suit is obviously an entry point and currently stands splayed open in a nearly macabre mockery of general humanoid form. Yes, the DSPRT Mark 1s. And he turns to you, Travis. He turns to Dr. Relax. And he says, your quarters, as it were.
I carved Go Pats Go in it.
I'm gonna crawl in more out of curiosity, and then be absolutely panicked if it starts to close on me.
He'll stop you. What's funny is he doesn't stop Dr. Swiftly at all. Swiftly, I'm assuming you're pulling out some kind of pocket knife or device.
Yeah, something I have acquired since being picked up from prison.
You got it.
And now carving.
He's got the back end of a toothbrush. He doesn't interfere with him at all, and instead stops you and says, you'll need the haptics before you can simply mount. Did you receive any training in the DSPRT systems? Wonderful. If you could stop trying to damage the equipment, he says offhandedly to you.
To no one in particular.
Yeah, to no one in particular, yeah. You'll need to get into your piloting haptic suits. This is, well, the only thing we have that'll keep you alive. And he gestures to behind the massive hydraulic lifts that the suits are suspended from. And sure enough, you can see rows of, I guess the best way to describe them is lockers. Though they have several different seals on them, almost hermetic style sealing, as if they're kept under vacuum. And sure enough, they're out of the 30 or so lockers that are spread across the back of this wall. They're separated into sections, one of them containing only a handful, and are marked very clearly in black and white with your names. F. Relax. B. McSwiftly.
Sciencey McScience face.
Sciencey McScience face.
I'm probably the only one that did research on their job prior to. I didn't know anything as I put my suit on.
My parents are both chemists, so I don't need to.
Please leave all of your personal belongings, equipment, all of your clothing within the sealed locker itself, and don the haptics within.
I should just get naked and start dressing, like, as if it's
Yep.
not a suit. I am, however, going to take my notebook with me, regardless of what they say. My notebook and pen are going with me.
Absolutely. While each of you are getting changed, he moves over and he grabs a small kind of notebook. Not a notebook. It's a manual that you can tell is a stereo-style manual. And he starts reading from small excerpts on the pages. The DSPRT Mark I exosuit. This vehicle is charged by both movement and temperature differences between its internal and external layers. It houses a full complement of nanobots, onboard medical and communication system, as well as an atomic 3D printer mounted on your right vestigial. I'm going to briefly go over its complement with you. And he starts indicating sections while each of you are getting changed, starting with that green transparent dome right on the top. He taps on it and he says, transparent titanium helmet inlaid with eye tracking AI and heads-up display. You should be able to control all of your suit's functions with the eye tracking and vocal command. And he begins to move down, touching on the collar, kind of indicating the interior of the dome. And he says, sensor and telemetry readout panels. This pairs with your feds, your farm, and your EDM systems to give you all the information of your environment that you should need. Moves to each of the arms. Starting with the left arm, he says, wrist-mounted suit controls. This is a backup in the unlikely event that your voice command and AI fail. This should allow you to control the entirety of your suit from the wrist-mounted controls. He taps on what appears to be an opened backpack, vaguely triangular in shape. He says, matter and sample storage. This is where you can keep anything that you deem mission critical. It has been loaded with equipment we believe will be useful given your specific specialties. Underneath it, he taps on a massive pressurized cylinder that's on one side of the splayed open back. He says, this is your inflatable survival habitat unit. It's only to be used in emergencies. Given the terrain and atmosphere of what you're going to be going into, do not attempt to breach any of your suit's seals without having this inflated around you. This is the only way you'll be able to safely remove the suit and administer any kind of needed repairs. Yes, Doctor, relax.
While he's going through the explanation of everything, I'm going to open up the storage unit to my Pathfinder gear and then immediately run like a systems check on it, and then send out a gigantic sonic pulse to get the first map reading, regardless of how disturbing that will be to other people's work. So, in not caring what they're doing, I'm going to make sure my equipment's working correctly.
All right, sure enough. So you go in, you start pulling out your tools. He's continuing on, trying to get the information displayed. As you activate the unit, go ahead and describe to me what the unit looks like and what its effect is like.
So it's going to be like not a particularly large unit, probably maybe held inside a case, 8 inches long by maybe 6 inches wide. Opens up to a fold-out antenna-like structure, as well as a flat pane that sets out the pulses. And then other than that, it's going to have like a pretty basic readout. It's going to give me a 3-dimensional map on a touchscreen that I can manipulate and turn. And then other than that, it's going to give me like a systems check of temperature, general location, north, south, east, and west, elevation, things like that. So just like a general, almost GPS readout with like a map attached, as well as being able to map both stationary and non-stationary objects. So it'll flag things that are obviously not in motion one color and things that are moving in a different color.
Okay. So you activate it and you bombard the hangar with this sonic pulse. Fortunately for you and your team, it's not terrible, but you can feel the reverberation of it deep down, churns your stomach, hits your bones. And you actually watch Dr. Knight step away and jerk his head and almost stumble. When he looks back up, you can see his eyes have become kind of bloodshot. He's trying to blink through it, and a trickle of crimson fluid begins to leak. He reaches up and touches it and shakes his head, and you can feel that simmering rage. And he kind of
Mapping
rips
unit's
out.
working great.
He kind of rips out a handkerchief and holds it to his face. He says, "A map of the facility was provided to you in your handout, which of course you never received."
I had to make sure I'm not taking anything into the field that I have not verified is functional.
He kind of nods and gets back to it, indicating one leg of the suit, kind of mustering on past your interference. And he says, "External sensor deployment modules are located on the right leg. We refer to these as the EDM. Just underneath that, on the right leg, is the pilot health assistance and repair modules. We refer to these as the PHARM, PHARM. Situated in the calf of each leg of the unit is the flare and emergency deterrent systems, FEDS." And he looks directly at you, Travis, and he says, "These have been thoroughly vetted and tested. Do not fire your flares in the hangar."
I will be firing the flares, but not in the hangar. You have to test all material before taking it into the field.
Right arm is an atomic 3D printer containing 136 yards of digital material to use to create tools on your journey. The 3D printer should take less than 2 minutes for simple objects. And last but not least, he steps behind each unit and picks up a small white case, again sealed like the rest, and cracks it open, and there's actually a small hiss as the vacuum is broken. And he lifts it up, and on the inside is a simple red sphere. He picks it up, it's about the size of a grapefruit, and situates it onto what would be the belt buckle of the unit. And he says, "The Beep Boop Bop recon and sampling drone. You will receive precisely one. Please take care of it." You know what? There's a full readout in the system's AI about how each of these will work. Once you have your haptics on, mount.
Let's get it started.
Yeah. And he kind of gestures over, and there are several of the hangar kind of mechanics or hands, staff, if you will, that comes over to each of the units and begins to prep it for mounting.
Eric, I hope that was your chair.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So are we like Iron Man? So are people putting this on for us and we just stand there?
It's similar to Iron Man, but effectively you'll have two hands per suit that are keeping everything out of the way and kind of guiding each of you into the mount. And again, just like every step of the process so far, the last section of the haptics themselves appear to be a full body glove. It's relatively comfortable, if a little bit like putting on a full body condom. The exterior
Ryan
of it,
is the-
Wetsuit, but
As Ryan
okay.
is the expert.
yeah. Joke's on you, I'm into that. The external parts of it are
None of
covered
us
in
surprised.
in sensors and connections and ports and a whole host of bizarre technological sections that are well outside of each of your specialties to understand.
Woo!
The hood of the haptic goes over and leaves only a simple cutout of your face as the last piece of you to be exposed. Stepping into the suit is a relatively uncomfortable action. You have to be guided in by your hands. Your head goes through a heavy seal, and as you do so, you can feel the suit reading your haptics, connections, using the nanites every step of the way.
I just picture Jim Carrey coming out of the Rhino.
Little
just
bit.
throwing-
Little bit.
Getting
Getting a little warm inside these rhinos.
That's what I'm picturing with the suit.
I'm gonna, as soon as I get inside my suit, I'm gonna have the AI start running a full functions check on everything to include opening any containers that may be attached directly to the suit in
So
like the
before you-
most annoying way possible.
Before you get into that, the first thing you recognize when you get into the suit is indeed you do have a heads-up display, but the only thing it's blinking right now is a small loading screen, and it says haptic relay, and it's just filling. As you're watching this bar inch its way across each of your UIs, you can feel the suit close behind you with a significant finality. Each section is closed by hand, and you can hear a hiss as it's engaged, and you can feel your haptic suit connecting through what has to be some kind of intelligent system within the suit itself. It feels as if 1,000 fingers are crawling over the surface of your entire body, and you can feel the suit changing, shifting, and syncing to your movements. Dr. Knight stands in front of you and begins to speak, his voice relayed to you through what is arguably the most stereotypically bad comms that you would have expected from something so high-tech. It's slightly staticky.
Radio check here for the suit test. When we go for.
Additionally, at the bottom of your screen, your UI begins to turn on. You can watch all the lights in the caller unit begin to turn on one by one as your bar inches across the screen. And as he's speaking, it comes out very similar to what Travis just did. It's a little garbled, it's muffled, but it does prompt an AI to try to feed what he's saying at the bottom.
They got a bad chill.
Yeah. For anybody that's tried to use those similar functions before, you understand how poor they can work.
Still waiting on that radio check.
Still waiting on that radio check. If
Ryan just
you
froze
really-
in the funniest face.
Yeah.
You're good.
If you've really had no training whatsoever, please be aware that you're going to be operating a vehicle. This is not a raincoat. This is not something to play around with. You
Not
are
that
going to
type
be
of raincoat, Clark, you pervert.
No,
Stop
I
it.
was just thinking, like, what a weird comparison. Mech suit and raincoat. I often get them confused.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times it's been raining and I accidentally put on my mech suit.
Yeah. Whoopsie doodles.
Please
Silly
be
popping
aware.
the addendum on my way to work.
Please be aware you're going to be operating a 7.5 foot tall, 3.5 ton piece of machinery that is the most expensive and delicate sensor array on the planet.
Do you have spares?
So again, his face kind of pales and he casts a glance to his right. When your suit initializes, he presses on without answering your question. Be delicate. A wrong move from you could result in significant injury to the hangar and the hands that work in here. He looks
jump up and
distinctly
down.
at Travis.
Why am I the one catching shit for doing a functions check?
I'm doing one. I want to jump up and down and do cartwheel.
You gonna attempt to do a cartwheel?
Absolutely.
All right. This should be fun. Let's have
Roll
our
for
first checks of the
cartwheel.
game. All right, so one by one, I'm going to have you guys
I deploy
describe.
flares.
Yeah. Good grief.
It has
So-
to be a light show to go with the trick.
I'm just gonna run, like, I'm gonna ask my nice AI, like, hey, can you just run me a systems check and give me the top 10 things I need to know about you?
That's honestly what I was actually going to do, is have my AI do a full functions check.
All right, we'll have
I
that
w-
come from both of you. Eric, in an attempt to do a cartwheel.
I want to jump first. So I want to run, jump, and then continue running and do a cartwheel. I'm doing a full like mobility check while they're doing the fancy stuff.
Very well. Well, let's go ahead and call it a skill check since you've never piloted this particular vehicle before and received very little training and are attempting to do something so obviously outside of its design. You are going to be a disadvantage for this check. Let's go ahead and make a dash evade. So what you're going to want to do is check your dash and your evade. Which dice do you have assigned to those?
They're both the same, D4.
All right, so you'll take 2 d4s in hand.
Stand by. I gotta grab one more D4. I already grabbed one of each.
Oh, you could roll the same one twice. You'll
I
be
got
adding
it.
these together, so
I got my big bag of dice.
that's a terrible noise, and let's never do that again.
I
Um,
agree.
All right, so
Jeez.
next thing I'll need you to do, go ahead and flip the top 2 cards of your action deck. Show them to the camera.
Oh,
So we have twin sevens. All right,
I don't think he shuffled.
I did. I even
So-
shuffled on camera.
Eric's cheating.
those 2 cards are going to represent your test. What you're
Okay.
going to need to do now is roll both of your d4s and attempt to exceed the DC of those cards individually.
Okay, with a D4 impossible. Gotcha.
Well, you get to roll 2d4.
No, you just have to. Yeah, you just have to roll both of them 4.
A 3 and a 1.
You passed.
Okie dokie. So, when making any form of skill check, just so you are aware,
Eric just
If
killed
you
like
were-
6 hanger hands and goes back to prison. Story over.
if you were greater than or equal to both cards, it is a good outcome. If you were greater than or equal to one card, but not the other, it's an okay outcome, but comes with a complication. If you are less than both cards, it is about a bad outcome with a severe complication. As such, you jump up and down,
On over there.
bad and severe. All right, Dr. McSwiftly, you step out of the hydraulic lift that the suit was on, and you start to
Also
realize your
dies.
suit was never put on the ground. It never had any kind of traction. You were never released from any of these bindings. But the amount of power the suit puts forward kind of puts you into this spin on the hydraulic. The entire hangar starts to lose its mind. People start screaming, and a red spinning light activates on the back wall as one of the hangars rush and desperately hit it. And you watch all the hangar hands bail. They flee. You find yourself whipping around and around and around under your own bindings and the power feeds to the suit until you are entirely cocooned and you watch them rip from the wall in showers of sparks as you destroy the equipment.
Stand by. I'm like Superman, like full born, like in a
Yeah,
circle, still connected.
Well, effectively, you're more like a spinning top.
Yeah, but I want to hold my arms out.
Absolutely. And you
Splat
find yourself
caused even
entirely
more damage.
cocooned in the power lines. All right. So as far as a severe complication, while in your suit, you are actually going to not just reduce both your evade and dash skills by 1 die size,
Idiot.
but your suit is now lower on power and has suffered significant stress. You are going to be beginning the game with 1 stress marked on your character sheet.
Those rack up fast, especially when you have sacrificed stress to get a better die.
Indeed.
So I know, and everyone else can learn. Do I just mark one of these fancy boxes?
So yes, you'll start at the top with the first 2, then the next row, then the next row. As you accumulate stress, you suffer the penalties listed on your character sheet.
Oh yeah, no effects so far. See, not that bad. And I'm still in a hangar. I can repair stuff while we're walking.
You think he didn't answer if there were any spares or like spare parts.
So after several minutes of panicked hangar, most of them come out with fire extinguishers and big rubber gloves to try to get the sparking and malfunctioning equipment under control. And Dr. Knight comes out enraged, just shaking his head. Fortunately, your
That's
suit
what happens when you don't do
contains...
your function check.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Dr. Knight is very tolerant of us.
You are not the first team he's had to deal with.
But are we
And-
his
I
favorite?
feel like we're 6th. It was the count we're
We're
on.
the 5th.
The
We're
fifth.
the 5th.
Yeah, 5th times the charm. Yeah, it sounds like it's got
So
weight to everybody else.
Once again, please be aware that you are operating a $1 billion piece of equipment. You're a 3.5 ton, nearly 8 foot tall giant robot. Behave with some respect.
I always wanted to be a space marine.
I'm going to be releasing your suits from their lifts now. Dr. McSwiftly, we are going to extract you from your debris. Please make no movements.
I believe it's pronounced Debris.
I will talk to my AI while this is going on and learn about my AI, since I can't move.
All right, in short order, as we're coming up on our 90-minute mark, guys, so of course we're going to be doing a part 2, but I do want to get through a section, so. After Eric is removed from his cocoon of electrical cables and
Dr. McSwiftly.
yeah, Dr. McSwiftly,
He earned that PhD.
he doesn't need to be low key about it. Each of you are taken through some very basic functions of your suit. The suit itself does have an incredible amount of dexterity, and after a few minutes, the haptic suit relays to your AI. Your AI is not a very intelligent thing. It gives basic readouts, it can follow basic commands, but is not capable of speech or anything like that, even through text format. It's more of a command interface,
So Siri.
effectively. But fortunately, operating it is fairly straightforward. If you think about moving your arm up and flexing your fingers, the suit will do the same. If you think about taking a step, the suit will do the same. The most uncomfortable part is actually getting used to the fact that by stepping into it, you're nearly 8 feet tall, and your proprioception, your awareness of yourself, is a little more difficult. And under normal circumstances, you're instructed to take your time, go slower, and act as if the entire world is made out of cardboard. Don't jump up and down and do cartwheels.
Yeah, who would do something like that?
Yes, Doctor, relax.
I would like to grab my notebook and pen from the random person that I shoved it into as I was getting into my suit.
Oh, I thought you put it in
Want
your
my-
storage unit. Did you hand it to one of the hands? Okay.
Yes, I need it back. I have to take notes.
Okay.
I can't wait for you to break every little pencil you have with your mech suit.
That's my fear. That's what I'm fixing. That's what I'm trying to test out. In point of fact,
I would like to pull up my notes interface on AI so I can do digital recording of notes.
I know what I would like to do. I would
Yes.
like to have my 3D printer print me
A giant pen.
a reinforced pen that will work with my notebook. That
Those
will
old school
Excellent.
pencils.
in my big
Are you
gigantic
You-
mitts.
you have limited filament.
I need this pen.
Okay. So what we're going to do,
So what
under
you've learned,
normal
Clark,
circumstances,
Said I'm
You're
never
activating your
going on a
3D
survival adventure with any of you.
uses the
This
lay
pen is
cards
purple,
mechanic.
Clark, you judgmental ass.
So anytime you're making a tool or device, you would lay cards. This involves you laying down a card from your hand versus a card from my deck. Unfortunately, you do not have a hand of cards yet, and so you are going to default to the 0 card setting. That means, and you
Ready.
can have fun with this, your pen and notepad will print over the next couple of minutes.
I don't need
It
a new
prints-
notepad. I just need a pen. Just the pen.
Just a pen? Okay. It does print as the equivalent of a D4 item, but because you're at 0 cards, it comes with a complication.
Okay.
So, what is the complication of your printed pen? Now, under normal
I can
circumstances,
do it.
I would assign
it's
complications.
pink.
In this case, I'm going to give it
That's
to you.
not a complication.
It's not a complication. It's actually
It
a
only
nice
writes
color
in
for a pen. I'd
Spanish.
be able to find it. That's a complication. Yeah, that'll be a problem. Only writes in hieroglyphics that I can't read. Let's see. Complication.
Constantly runs out of ink.
You gotta shake it every time you write a word.
So,
Honestly,
if I was going to assign one to you, just to show you how it would normally go, in this regard, let's assume that you printed off the pin as a mission critical item.
Yeah.
I would say that it would be unreliable. You've ever worked with a pen where the ball didn't roll right, and so every time you're writing, about every third line, so to speak, is just scratches on the paper, leaves no ink behind? It would be something to that effect.
Scott
Perfect.
Morris said something about the button not working right, like the clicky button.
Click. Once you open it, it's just open. There's no spring. So
I'm gonna go with it. Still be like the complications. It's not very ergonomic. It's very uncomfortable to hold. It's gonna be an awkward shape.
okay. So your filament after printing is warped into this non-ergonomic shape, making it difficult for your still almost alien hands of your new home to manipulate or operate. And so you do end up writing with it, and it will function, but it's that kind of, it's as if you're holding a piece of charcoal in full grip as you're trying to write. It's these big kind of toddler-esque letters, but it does function.
I'm just going to kind of shrug and then go with it and continue to like scribble my notes on observations.
All right. So after that, and after Dr. McSwiftly is extracted from his mess, and after you've taken the time to print a pen, you are taken across the hangar into the next room. As you approach this one, your characters actually assumed this was a wall, and the heavy grinding as it begins to open and reveal the next section comes with a blast of air filled with white evaporation and mist. Yes, Eric.
Real quick before we leave the hangar, did I get my laser cutter, and how big is it?
So your specialty equipment that you selected is sized for your suit. So yes, you have your laser cutter. It's also a 3.5 foot long cutter.
Two-handed.
So, yeah.
Terrified that you have a device of destruction, given how you performed immediately with your suit.
Well, I
Stand
thought
by.
about.
I didn't take the other weapon. I took the laser cutter.
He
see?
could have taken a laser Gatling cannon.
Yeah,
so
see?
I'm calling
I
it a
took the
win.
more responsible item.
I thought that was on Clark's list as a chemist.
Yeah, it was. You know how
It
much
was indeed.
chemical things I could do with the the Gatling gun.
All right.
So let me rearrange your chemical makeup by melting you.
The next section of the hangar does not contain suits. This section of the hangar contains a half dozen massive ovoid rooms, as if somebody took a cylindrical tower and cut it into sections. Each one is approximately 15 feet high and approximately 45 feet across. Each is attached to a massive 2-foot thick cable to a huge, complex winch and pulley system in the roof. The people that are working around it seem like children playing around a house comparatively in size. Yes, Travis.
Getting a real drop pod vibe from these.
Indeed. Ominously, especially for Dr. Conway, you get a small glimpse at some of the other team's chambers, as one of the cables is still slowly liquefying and contains no room at all. Another chamber has been imploded into a ball the size of a Volkswagen and is dripping is at least mundanely smashed as if by a falling rock or massive log.
So that's like hydraulic fluid, right? Coming out of the one that's leaking red?
Absolutely.
Question towards Dr. Knight.
He does not respond. Instead takes you to a pristine, brand new unit. This is going to be, we call it the delivery. There's a more complicated scientific name that holds no merit here. This is your sole way in and your sole way out. Please take care of it. And he looks at Eric distinctly.
Did they get out? And I'm going to point
Dr. McSwiftly.
Yeah, Dr. Taylor McSwiftly.
It's Dr. Bobbert, as it were. McSwiftly. And he just looks at you for a long moment and simply says, yes, they did.
Alive?
As like a paste? Or?
Let's say clarifying questions are required.
Fortunately for each of you, the system is automated. When you are ready to extract, simply radio. But there is something you must know. Your pod will anchor when it reaches its destination. In order to extract, you will need to sever these anchors. Otherwise, we will not be able to draw you back up. Sever the anchors before you board for extraction. Please. And he says
Is that what happened with the toothpaste tube?
He kind of looks over at the slowly melting cable that's still turning into a liquid. And he says, no.
Okay.
Let's get the show on the road.
I feel like maybe there should have been more training before you just dumped us into this, but like, who am I, right? Like, I'm not in charge of any of this.
So each of you are ushered into one of these cylindrical chambers, and the interior is covered in displays. Effectively, there's a column in the center, and around that column there are several displays that point towards large braced bracketing, obviously sized for your suits. And Travis, you were not wrong. It's a drop pod. Each of you are guided into one of these sections, and the braces almost violently latch onto your suit's shoulders. And you get that weightless feeling as it's hoisted into the air. And a massive system swings your pod out over the white void.
I secure my notebook and shitty pen.
A voice comes through your radio, not Dr. Knight's, but an unknown voice to you. And he says, "All right, welcome Expedition Team number 5. I wish you the best luck you ever had for. We're going to be descending in about 5 seconds. Is everybody ready?" And then the radio just cuts out and is replaced by this modulated sound of Ozzy Osbourne's voice laughing as Crazy Train begins to play. And your pod drops into free fall.
I have so many additional questions for the scientific team. I'm getting a real, hooter from Dukes of Hazzard. He's our head mechanic here.
You got to remember, most of the scientists went down in the first beginning, as was our story. So
you're getting
the majority of them.
Fifth string here.
Yeah, I have to reach real deep into the bench here.
A-team, baby.
A-team.
Hey,
all right.
I just want everyone to know that Nick Foles still won a Super Bowl, so anything's possible. Go me.
So, before we reach the end of our intro here, so we can get ready for section 2, your drop pod plummets in absolute free fall. You can feel it in your stomach, and you're suddenly quite grateful for the bindings keeping you on the wall of the unit. You can hear the metallic hiss of your cable thrashing at the top of the pod. Travis, you had a question?
No, more like an action I was going to take during the descent.
Okay.
I'm going to hit him with my battle shout. Battle shout sounds very similar to like a high-pitched, terrified scream, but it's slightly different in that it's a battle shout and not a terrified scream.
Sound like a squeal?
Not quite a squeal, because it's not doing the squee. It's more like the...
Like to test my suit's capabilities of recycling liquids.
What's funny is the only reaction to either of those actually comes unnoticed, most likely, to you, Dr. Relax, as a little red speaker icon pops up in the bottom right of your HUD.
I'm hot micing this the whole way down.
You would hot mic.
This is
by the time the descent begins to end, you all become keenly aware of it, because your pod snaps under tension and begins to swing violently, as if somebody just hit the brakes, and then slams into something far beneath, a bottom of the void.
I feel like these suits could have come in brown.
Yeah. You can hear 4 immense blasts happen outside the pod itself. Conceivably, the anchors being seated. The front door is ejected by explosive charges. And you get your first look at the world underneath yours. Your restraints release. And that's where we're going to stop tonight's episode.
Sever the anchors and request to return to the surface.
I was going to say, I use my laser cutter and I shoot 2 of them immediately. So it's easier for me to evacuate later when I'm leaving people.
All right, guys. So that is going to be our intro. And if we are going to do a part 2, we'll pick that up next week. And we'll get to see the top layers as our valiant scientists begin to make their way down towards the core of the Earth.
I would love to do a part 2 on this.
Yeah, we could definitely do a part 2. I don't see why not. Do I do anything with these 7s, or do they just go on the bottom of my deck?
So they would simply go into a discard pile. The discard pile would be shuffled later. So if you want to, just go ahead and add them back to your deck, reshuffle, and be prepared for next week.
I'll just put it on my notes. I got my portal notes printed, so I don't use the
Nice.
7s again.
Excellent. That'll work quite nicely. For everybody in the audience, I hope you had fun with this little intro of Substratum Protocol. We're looking forward to getting into the meat of it next week. It is going to be coming out in 90-minute segments through the month of March. With any luck at all, and depending on how distracted our team of scientists get, next session could very well lead all the way to the core. They could get to level 2. I don't know yet. So you'll have to tune in to see how far they get.
How well we can rein in Dr. McSwiftly.
Whoa! I feel like I did the less talking out of everybody. I just had the coolest action.
Well, you did more
And
damage
the
to
coolest
yourself.
Yeah.
Travis did more damage to others, so...
I didn't do any
And
damage.
I am just a
Get a
good
function
bear.
on a sonic mapping device, okay? It's not my fault that their insides couldn't handle it. You don't take equipment into the field without doing a test, okay? Functions matter.
Well, and what's funny is that was actually designed to be used by your suit's like manipulation, right? So it's a chonking unit. But I digress. Guys, I do want to take a minute before we end tonight's episode to send a thank you to our audience that tuned in live. It's fantastic to have you here. I hope you had a good time. I also want to send a thank you to all of our people that watch afterwards, and encourage you to do all the fun algorithm stuff, like, comment, share, all that fun stuff. Leave us on a tab muted in the background. But it's something that lets us do what we do. So thank you very
Turn
much.
us on, but don't even listen to us.
I mean, you know.
Yes, Eric?
So,
I probably listened to us more than any of the three of you combined.
feels
All the,
living, so.
exactly. So I listen a
With-
lot.
But with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. We will be continuing this story, hopefully next time, barring anything that comes up in the meantime. But with that, if nobody has anything else, thanks for joining us on our adventure, and we will catch you next time.
See you guys.
Use.